Nick, let's talk about the USC Trojans. Trojans have had a really good offseason up to this point. I think we're starting to see spring ball unveil. We're seeing what that brings to the table. But let's not forget, behind the scenes, everyone is still recruiting. They're still trying to get talent. They're still building for the future. And this latest move, this was a big one. This was a huge, huge win for the Southern Cal football team. I think it was probably one of the biggest wins of the offseason. We're going to unveil it in just a second here. But before we get into that, I'm Andrew. That's Nick. This is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, a absolutely massive win for the Trojans with this one. The big time flip, beating out Oregon from one of the better players in this recruiting class. I think this was a really great one for Southern Cal. Let's jump on into the tweet and we can talk more about it on the other side. This is, of course, from over on X at Hayes Fawcett from On3 Sports. Great follow for all of your recruiting news. Says breaking 4-star defensive lineman. I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to try my best. Tomuhini Topui has committed to USC, he tells me, for @On3 Recruits. The 6'3", 320-pound defensive lineman from Inglewood, California, was previously committed to Oregon. He says, I am staying home. I think this was a big win for Lincoln Riley and all of the coaches at this program. Curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Southern Cal fans, in the comment section below, let us know, what do you think so far about the shaping up of the defensive side of things? I think that's a key here we've seen. There's a really concerted effort, getting more coaches, getting more recruits, getting more transfers to really construct a stronger defense for the Trojans. Do you think it worked? Are you pretty, give us, a feel. Is it an A? Is this like something you're supremely confident in? You think you're going to have one of the best defenses in all of college football this year? Is it a C? You're really, there's some exciting stuff. Don't know how it's going to pan out. Maybe it needs a little bit more time to develop. Or is it an F? You really just don't have any, faith in this team anymore. I think it's going to be offensive shootouts every single day still. And you don't really think the defense has anything to bring to the table. Let us know. What do you think about the development of the defensive side of the football this offseason in the comment section below? But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on this latest get for USC?
So there's a lot to really unpack here. Let's start with Eric Henderson, the Eric Henderson effect. I think that's what this is, right? He was brought into the fold for making moves just like this to get USC's talent and talent development back to where it needs to be. Obviously, people remember the Trojans going back to the Pete Carroll days and even prior to that, back in the old days about offense and scoring points and great running backs and great quarterbacks. But the reality is the dynasty of USC was predicated on having a lot of great players on the defensive side of the ball. They've been doing a good job kind of reloading over the past couple seasons, and I think the addition of Topui is going to really help with that. Now you consider the context that he was heavily favored to go to Oregon for the longest time, even though he's a SoCal kid, obviously going to Mater Dei, not far away from USC, relatively speaking, of course, at least compared to Oregon. And yet the Trojans and Lincoln Riley and his staff, Henderson company, were able to get this flip, able to get it done. That's a great job by them winning back a local kid. We talk about it all the time on this channel, especially if you're a team like USC, when you live in just a hotbed of recruiting. You got to dominate locally first, right? You can be tempted to go national, be tempted to go after all the big name national headlines. But if you're not winning local, if you allow your interconference competition like Oregon to go local and steal some of your guys, that's a problem. And it looks like USC with Lincoln Riley here got it fixed. And that's obviously a good sign. Now let's talk about Topui and what he can do as a football player. Here's the interesting about this kid. He's 6'3", 320 pounds, and he's like 16, 17 years old, right? So he's already a monster. But when you look at his high school film, and again, it's high school film, so big old honking grain of salt, he doesn't look that big, which I think is scary. Because if you got a guy that's 6'3", 320 pounds, and you look at him and say, looks relatively lean. I mean, he looks massive on film. Don't get me wrong. It takes up like 3 holes, right? He's a huge guy. But when I think 300-pounders in high school, I think of a guy who's fat. Or I think of a guy who's like 6'7", right? When you see a guy that's 6'2", 6'3", and he's 320 pounds, and he doesn't look 320, that's a really, really good sign. That means that he can put on a little bit more muscle, get even bigger and stronger without his weight ballooning completely out of control at the next level. He's a great athlete. He runs well already at 300 plus pounds. That's obviously a great sign. Again, a big concern with some of these high school 300 pounders is what happens when you have to go up against real athletes at the college level. And how's your conditioning going to last, right? It's usually a problem for those kids. That's why ideally you want defensive linemen to be, let's say, defensive tackles to be like 260, 250-ish in high school and then grow into be a 300 pounder by the end of your college career, ideally. But you got a special case here in Topui who looks like he's 250 in terms of how great of an athlete he is, but he is a monster of a human being already at such a young age. So no matter how you look at this move by USC, this is what's so spectacular about it. Such an incredible job. It's the local strategy winning that once again, absolutely critical. It's stealing a top flight recruit from one of your bitter conference rivals, absolutely critical. And you're getting a potentially special prospect all the while. Again, no matter how you look at this, every single box is checked. Great job by the USC coaching staff and a great sign for the future.
Yeah, Nick, and I think the key here is what you said, dominating locally and doing it well. They've been able to do it easily on the offensive side of the ball, but now just being able to see they've started to dominate on the defensive side of things as well, especially locally. They've had a lot of really great guys. RJ Sturman in this class, cornerback, really highly rated four-star prospect out of Rancho Cucamonga, California, really local guy doing a lot of great things there. Brandon Lockhart, another DB, highly rated 4-star out of California. Topui, again, really great defensive player out of the state of California. Then just numerous guys. So many guys because in this class, in this 2026 class so far, this has been, I would say, so far, it's very early on. So let's, pump the brakes. Let's hold our horses. Let's see how this all pans out. But this is the number one rated class. And for them to be able to come and hit the state of California hard, get really solid players out of here. They've gotten 12 players out of the state of California thus far in this recruiting cycle. I think that's really big. The last time they got 12 players, last time they got over 10 players was back in 2023. And that was one of their better graded recruiting classes. It was an overall 7 graded recruiting class, top 7 class, 8 class as far as grading transfers in there as well. But this was a 7th overall recruiting class in 2023. They get away from it a little bit in 2024. Only 7 guys out of the state of California. They're 17th now, 20th in recruiting, 19th in transfer portal. You go back to last season, 4 guys out of the state of California. They're 14th. Still, they come back this year and they say, hey, what do we do? When will some of our best recruits? It was back when we were just hammering the state of California, getting all the best players, really making a concerted effort there. We see a course correction there this time. 12 players again out of the state of California. This guy shows it. They're battling now. If a good player leaves the state of California, goes to commit somewhere else like Oregon, doesn't matter what school it is, even if it's a big school like Oregon, they're going to battle and they're going to try to flip them and get their local in-state kids to come back to this school. I think this is huge for Southern Cal going forward because I think they maybe lost sight of this a little bit. They maybe just didn't have the direction, the focus. They need to get back to basis. Something on this channel we talk about a lot of time. You got to nail down your base. You have to recruit locally, then branch out regionally, then nationally. That seems like the case here, and we're already seeing some good results. Number 1 overall class so far in recruiting for Lincoln Riley in this Southern Cal team. I think is a really, really great course correction, and I would be very excited about the new direction they're going in recruiting for this team.
And what's going to be interesting to follow over the coming weeks, months, and really the next couple of years is the vibe of the dominant team on the West Coast, because that's clearly been Oregon for the past couple seasons. That's just a fact, right? Not making anything up, not trying to hate on USC, not trying to pump up the Ducks program. They've been the best program on the West Coast. That's an undeniable fact. Dan Lanning, the coach there, has done a great job. Whether you hate him or love him, you just have to acknowledge that's a fact. But we're starting to see the pendulum swing a little bit much closer to the USC program. If there's one program that can get on Oregon's level, and to be totally frank, exceed Oregon's level in some ways, vastly exceed Oregon's level, it's the Trojans. So that's going to be very interesting to follow, because if USC can dominate Southern California, an area that Oregon has done a great job in, if USC can dominate the entire state, which they traditionally have, a state that the Ducks over the past few years have done a great job in, then we're going to see a massive shift in the best team on the West Coast. And that's a really important dynamic, right? Because if you're a recruit, especially if you live on the West Coast, or if you live in Hawaii or anything like that, if you're part of that natural hotbed, even in Texas, right? Arizona, that whole neck of the woods, Nevada, places like that. The best team on the West Coast, that's where you want to go. That's why one of the reasons why Alabama was so great in the SEC for so many years, because they were the big dog. If you were a top flight recruit, whether you were in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, whatever, Alabama was number one or number two on your radar because they were the best team in the conference. A players, we say this all the time, A players want to play with A players. If you're an A player, you don't want to go to a school with a bunch of B and C players. You want to go with a bunch of A players, right? And that's exactly what the Oregon Ducks have done the past couple of years, except now Lincoln Riley and Henderson and these moves, right? Bringing in Bowden from Notre Dame, the pendulum is slowly shifting back to USC's favor. And if USC can retake the mantle as the preeminent program on the West Coast, then they can return to winning conference championships and winning playoff games and making deep title pushes once again. We know Lincoln Riley's a really smart offensive mind. He's really good at finding and developing quarterbacks. We think he'll crush it. We think Longstreet's going to be a great player. I think everyone understands that. We know Lincoln Riley knows offense. But the reality is, and I kind of talked about it at the beginning of this video, is that USC, when they're winning championships, when they're a dynasty, is because not just great talent on offense, but great talent in depth on defense. And we're seeing that momentum shift to the Trojans. More moves have to happen, more dominoes have to fall, but it's a great start for the USC Trojans, taking control of the power on the West Coast back from the Oregon Ducks.